Hey, how are you? I am doing
How are you?
pretty well. First first try, we got you on.
Pretty.
First try.
Hey, it's amazing because technology and I do not get along so.
It normally takes me like two or three tries, but the invites are weird, so I'll take it. Work this time.
Hey, first, I need to compliment you
You
on
like
your
that?
flannel. I have I have heard things about this flannel previously, and now I get to see
Who
it in
said
person.
things
This is
about my
amazing.
flannel?
I like it. Well, someone we have in common. Kenneth told me about these
Oh,
flannels, and I'm
they're
like, what
really
are we talking
nice.
about?
Yeah.
So,
And they're
yeah.
kind of like they're very soft on the inside, so they're not itchy like cheap flannels are. Yeah. Yeah, they're nice. I would highly recommend if you're in the market for a flannel.
I love that a man of your stature appreciates a nice soft
Listen,
flannel next to his
I
skin.
appreciate comfort in general. I'm a man of comfort. I'm not a man of cosmetic. You know, I'm not too worried about it. But the pants are nice too. So they have like some unisex like sweats and stuff that are really really nice.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to check those out. Oh,
That wasn't
it's
intentional, but
it. This is
yeah.
a shameless plug.
Somebody
Let's just do the
asked what
commercial.
brand. It's Morphogen Nutrition, the supplement company. It's just their clothing line. Um, Everything's drop shipped too, so it's all made to you know made to order type of deal. Sweet, cool. All right,
Nice.
we're getting some people jumping on. So you've done lives? Yeah, you do lives, right?
I've
Yeah.
done a few. I've done a few. Yeah.
All right, cool. So we wanted to get on and talk about fitness goals or navigating fitness goals for those folks that are in the 40 and 50 plus age range brackets. So,
Those of us who are
yes.
veterans on the planet, I like to say.
So you know, I'll have you know, and you'll like this. Somebody posted that in my story that we were getting on here, and they said something along the line, had their little graphic, and they said something along the lines of like, I should be showing you two a thing or two, and I'm like, he thought that you were like in your late 30s or something. I know. I was
Oh
like,
my
well, I
gosh,
said, no, Laura.
that's
I said, Laura's
lovely.
got you. I'm fairly certain, but she doesn't show it.
Yeah, I am coming up
Yeah.
35 too in a
Yep.
couple of months.
I wasn't sure the exact. I knew it was somewhere. I knew it was
Yeah.
somewhere around there.
Yeah. And you know, you wouldn't, it's funny that people say that because in my 20s and 30s, I was like a completely different person than I am. I partied like
Yeah.
a rock star,
I
man.
always, I always find it
Yeah.
interesting that you can, like, when you're, you can obviously age yourself in your 20s still, but you have to really, really, really beat yourself up. You know what I mean? You can get away with a
Yeah.
lot. I always find it interesting that you could take two 20-year-olds with pretty different lifestyles and maybe not tell which one's healthy and which one's not, at least not to a large extent. But two 50-year-olds, you certainly can, because there's a lot of time that's elapsed between, between the
Yeah.
two.
Lots of choices in that
Right.
time frame being made.
Um, so,
Yeah.
so when we're talking about this age bracket, if you will, I think a good thing we can kind of lead with is um, talk about some of the common challenges that may differ a little bit from the younger crowd. Okay, so we'll say younger, we'll say like below 30, or 35 and below, or something like that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. My dog is over here. Honestly, I think the biggest thing that I would say is kind of the overarching or umbrella type of situation when it comes to that. The big difference is that how do I say that? Oh my gosh. We in this age bracket have a mindset that we can't, or we shouldn't, or we're different, or all of those things, right? So when you're in your 20s and 30s, it's all about, hey, I can push myself, and you have all these people you can look towards, and you should be doing these things, and you there's this belief system that you're at the prime of your life, right? And once you hit 40, oh my gosh, I remember when I hit 30, I was like, oh, this isn't bad, this is great. And I hit 40, I went, whoa, now everybody's telling me that everything is downhill from here. Like I should just buy the walker right now and get it out for myself, right? Because this is going to be bad. It's going to go down fast. I think that's the biggest issue is when we get to this point, there are so many things telling us that number one, we have to slow down. Number two, we just can't. You just, when you're this age, you just can't do what they did in their 20s, 30s. And I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, shoot, I was a fat kid in elementary and middle school. And we did these presidential fitness tests. I don't know if anybody remembers those because I'm aging myself. Yep. Look, I'm talking about age. I could not do any of those. I couldn't do I couldn't hold a bent arm hang. I can rip out 10 pull-ups right now, strict, easy. I couldn't do a rope climb. I got my first rope climb when I was 41, right? So it's that belief system that we take into our 40s and 50s because I shouldn't say we're bombarded with it in social media and all those things, but I think it's just in us that we go, oh, I'm more tired. I don't have as much time. I'm older, so I can't do these things. And these things apply to me.
There's definitely, this is kind of the way I think about it. So let's say that we have a certain potential in terms of a certain ceiling in terms of like, this is what we can look like and perform like, right? This is and everyone's going to be different. What I find with a lot of people, especially in Gen Pop, probably a lot of like the population that you're working with, is that they haven't even really begun to tap into that stuff yet because they really haven't done any of these things in their 30s and their 20s. They were doing all the things they shouldn't have been doing. Whereas like a competitor that's maybe started competing at 20, by 35, they're kind of already at their genetic ceiling. You know what I mean? And they're maintaining. So those goals and progression are different. Those are the people that, hey, they might actually decline and lose just a tiny bit of that edge. It's not like they're falling apart, but they may not maintain quite what they were when they were 35 if they're 55, right? But
because
right, but if you only started when you were 40, which is a lot of people, like a lot of these general population people that are starting later on, they haven't even begin to tap into that potential. So they still have years of they can still get better into their 50s because they haven't tapped into anything yet. So I think it's difficult to compare that person with somebody that's already kind of met that ceiling and has been really serious about things for 10, 20, 30 years, I
think, you know what though? The mind shift is similar though, right? Because if I've hit ceiling in my 30s because I've been competing and doing all those things, right? And then you compare that to the Gen Pop person over here who, just needs to put barbecue down, beers, get off the couch, when they're 40, they're trying to reach their potential. The shift in mindset though is similar, right? Is that now it just has to look different, right? So many people think it's going to be worse or it's going to be better, but it just looks different because once and I'm just assuming because I am not yet a competitor, I'm assuming, right, that once you get to that level and you kind of you just have to moderate things a little differently.
Like me, for example, I'm a perfect person for this discussion because my very first competition, I was 18 years old. Yeah. So at 55, I'm not adding muscle. I'm done, right? I mean, at 40, realistically, at 40, probably not. You know what I mean? And frankly, I don't really have any desire at 45 years old to eat 6,000 or 7,000 calories a day. Like I don't, you know what I mean? So, and again, it depends on what your goals are. If maintaining for me is going to be a little different than maintaining for a general population person that just wants to look good, because for me, I have to come to terms with the fact that I'm not going to be peak muscle, peak condition. Like some of that is going to fall off. I'll still look good, right? But I'm not going to be, I have to understand that. But for someone that's just trying to be the best you that they can be, you know, it's pretty realistic that you can maintain a similar level of physique, strength, health, etc. for quite a long time, until maybe you run into like in injuries or something. But even then, you know, you can kind of work around some things. But yeah, I'm not going to be getting better at 55.
Right. Think that too, though, and this is kind of goes back to what you said about what that person kind of texted or DM'd you about was, or commented about was,
right.
That's relative, right? That's relative, because there are people who, when you get to that age, 90% of the people that are your age are not going to be in the position you're in. They're not going to look like you. They're not going to feel like you do. They're not going to be as healthy as you are, right? So you kind of have to, even if you're a Gen Pop person, right? You kind of have to look at it like, I may have peaked. However, man, I got such a better life. I train a lady in my gym. She's also a client of mine, and she's 72. And she looks great. She can hardly move. Like her homework is to go home and get up and down off the floor like 10 times.
Yeah.
Right. And for someone who takes care of themselves, and, you know, even if you do peak in your 20s, 30s, whatever it is, and you maintain your quality of life as you get older and as you become more veteran on the planet, is just going to be better because you're going to continue to maintain.
I train a few people in person. I don't advertise this because it's not really my favorite thing to do, but I do enjoy these individuals because they've been with me a really long time. And one in particular, it's probably been 5-6 years, maybe something like that. And she's mid 70s at least, maybe even a little older. And she had gone through a weight loss transformation. Essentially, all of that happened like in her 60s, in her 60s and early 70s. So most of her actual progress happened at 65 to 75 years old. Now, granted, she's also had 2 shoulder replacements and hip replacement, and probably needs another hip replacement. So the things that we're able to do are limited, but that just goes to show, like, you can definitely improve your life in any age bracket. And for a lot of people, it's not as complex as it's probably made out to be. Sometimes, and I think coaches are bad. Go ahead.
Do you know what I think the complexity of it is? And I think you're going there right now, is meeting them where they are, and being the coach that's of a certain age, whatever age that is like, if I'm used to coaching people who are 40s, 50s, 60s. Okay. So nutrition coaching, functional coaching, all this stuff. I understand that I need to meet them exactly where they are. And I take a lot of time to find out exactly where that is and where they've been and where they are mentally and kind of where their mindset is about everything, because of everything I personally have gone through, right? I've gone through a gut protocol. I was anorexic and bulimic. I used to run marathons and put myself in a hole that way. My thyroid was taking a dump. I was on birth control for 31 years, which was insanity. Like all those things, and never fed myself correctly and all of that. And luckily I've come out of it in pretty good dang shape physiologically. Like my labs look incredible. but to be able to, work with someone in their 40s, 50s, and 60s when
Yeah.
maybe you haven't had those experiences, and
Yeah.
you kind of go, well, just follow the
Yeah.
plan,
It's
right?
funny. So that's actually, but that's any population. So a funny one is this is super ironic too. Maybe it's not ironic, but I find it kind of funny is so I work with in the mentorship, I work with a lot of functional health coaches, right? So eventually the goal would be to fix someone so they can improve their body composition, right? So then when they get to the point where they can actually improve their body comp, they're afraid to like take calories away, or they're afraid to add too much in because they've actually never done it with anyone, because everyone that they've worked with has just been like broken, you know, or like a
Right.
coach, like a coach that's only worked with females, and then they get a guy that needs 3 times the food, and they're like afraid to give him food. I'm like, no, it's fine, you know. But
Yeah.
ultimately,
Yeah.
it really, if from a coaching aspect, it really just boils down to just reading the biofeedback and just and looking at what they need as a person. I mean, we know calorie deficit, calorie surplus. We know what the labs look like. We know what a gut health looks like. So it's not, it may, how we get there may be different with that population, but it's still, as long as you know what you're looking at, you can navigate it. I enjoy it. I enjoy I enjoy all populations really, but I definitely find some different. There are some pros and cons of that group. Y'all are stubborn, and
Yes. We call it set.
so, but it's not. It's a different stubborn than the 20-year-olds. The 20-year-olds, because 20-year-olds, it's like an ego thing, right? It's like I can't let go of my ego. I read some studies, and I'm going to tell you how I should be coached. And in 50s or
Yeah.
60s or 70s, it's not that. It's more so that it's adapting to lifestyle that's harder because they've done the same damn thing for 50 years.
Over.
you know?
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that, because that really, when I work with my clients, most of my work with them, there's not a lot of adjustments because we go back to the basics, right? We're creating small habits that create behavior over time, right? But it's those small habits they get stuck on. Oh my God, you say calorie deficit, and so many people when I start working with them are already
Right.
in a
They've
calorie
been
deficit. They're already in it,
undereating for.
and they don't.
Do you find, I'm going to interrupt you a little bit.
Oh yeah.
I find this, so I find that in general population people, the older they get, I run into more undereating. Not intentional undereating, not
Oh
intentional undereating. They just don't eat.
no.
You know,
Yes. And I think it's interesting because part of that, I was thinking about that before we got on here, is number one, when we get to this age, we have been talking about calorie deficit, right? Multiple ways to create a calorie deficit. And if we're doing all the things and being stressed out all the time, right? Thinking about all the things, doing all the things, that creates a calorie deficit, even if you're not moving around a lot, right? Because your brain uses a lot of energy. Creates a lot of stress on the body, a lot of stress on your adrenals and your thyroid and all the things. So I they get hyper involved in everything, and then eating just isn't that important. Oh, I'm not hungry. Like their hunger
yeah.
signals are all shut down, and they are like, and I find this all the time. It's like, well, I'm not going to eat if I'm not hungry. It's like, oh no, we need you to eat. Like we need you to eat. And then you have the opposite of that where, and I've seen this so much, is they're like, well, I'm older, I shouldn't be eating as much, right? Just because of the number of years they've been on the planet. It's like, well, no, that's not true either. Right now, I'm eating 300 calories a day. I'm 52. And I don't work out 3 times a day, right? I work out 4 days a week. I
Right.
train and I go for walks, and that's it.
And there probably are some environmental things that play into it. Like they have less muscle mass a lot of the time. They've atrophied, they've kind of lost some muscle mass. They maybe don't move as much, you know. But I think for me the problem is I know those things, and I know that those things would lower their caloric requirements, but when we start doing those things, they still think they need to lower caloric requirements. Like, no, now you're exercising, now you're walking, now you're moving. whatever. I'm like, what you were eating before is not supporting you anymore. You know, hell, it wasn't really supporting you in the first place. It's definitely not supporting you now. So, I mean, I have found,
Right. And do you add calories? Do they freak out?
yes, I mean, a
A little
lot of
bit?
the time, but I think that's, I mean, a lot of people have that. If they've chronically undereaten, they might freak out for different reasons, like they're gonna, you know, get fat or something, right? But yes, it's but it's not difficult to do once you can get them to start doing it and they start feeling those hunger signals and everything starts actually clicking, they're fine. It's just it's like anything else. Like if I can get someone to do something, I say 3 to 5 times consistently, whether it's eating more, exercising, feeling better, fixing their gut, whatever, buy-in's easy after that. They just have to see that it works, right?
And do you find that is that the issue with relations? I feel that the buy-in takes more conversation, more support, a lot more like, I don't want to call it hand holding, but a lot more explanation from me as a coach than it does for
Um,
working with someone who's younger.
yeah, for general pop, yeah. I'd say the only group that's probably that compares, again, this is different, is the extreme functional health cases that have a lot of body image issues, a lot of like trauma and in psychology. Those people buy-in's difficult. Um, but for different reasons. It's not, yes, that they're both habits, but the older populations because they've done it for a million years, the younger populations because they lack all self-awareness of the things that are hurting them. You know, two different two different
Right.
things. But yeah, I'll poke at some of my older clients too. I'm like, why are you so stubborn? Like it's fine, just relax. I was like, what? I'm like, what's the worst that's gonna
Yeah.
happen? I said, you already been around this long. I said, what else is gonna happen? And so sometimes you
Right.
just have to,
Yeah.
and this is everyone really, like just getting people to think a little bit about the right stuff, not on the internet, but getting people to think about the right things,
Right.
and changing people's thought process is how you win at the end of the day. We've talked about this a million times over. You can formulate the perfect plan, but unless you know how to tap into that, meet someone where they're at, and like start tapping into that, you're not going to be successful.
Yeah. And you talking about that is so interesting. I just had a client call yesterday, and I've been working with this lady. She's in her mid 40s for, oh my, 2 years, 2.5 years. And she honestly, at one point about 6 months ago, she just got angry. She's like, Laura, don't talk to me about stress. I am not stressed. And even just the way she said it, I'm like, well, okay.
Okay.
So, but we talk about stress and we talk about it in a variety of ways. I talk about energy out and like all those things. And so I found different ways to talk to her about like, how busy are you? How much pressure do you feel? How overwhelmed do you feel? Those kinds of things, right? Because her body composition wasn't changing the way she wanted it to. And what she would do is she would just overdo things. She would overschedule herself, not paying attention to the fact that her body actually, when she relaxed, her body would do what we wanted it to do, right? Yesterday, having a conversation with her, she just came right out and was like, yeah, I did so much last week. Oh, that must be why I'm up a couple of
We
pounds. And I
got
was
it.
like,
It happens.
yes. So we dug. Oh my God, it was. And I think that's part of it too for working with older populations, is that you just get stuck in that rut of doing and doing and doing. And like you said, the awareness piece is you have to be aware that what you're
Right.
doing isn't working, and you can't just do more because it's not going to work. So yeah, the awareness is so huge, and it's really difficult. It's really difficult, like you said, when you come up against, especially I find, especially women who are in their 40s and 50s, etc., who've been doing it this way for so long, and you have to find a way to say it in a way they get, or it just takes time for them to figure it
Yeah.
out after being talking to you so
Yeah,
much,
I agree.
so
So there's There's a couple other little things I wanted to touch on too from like actually the programming aspect is if I, we'll use a different scenario. So let's say it is a person, they could be Gen Pop, they don't have to be a competitor, but let's say they've been exercising in some capacity for a lot of years. Um, I do sometimes have a difficult time, or they have a difficult time with realizing that their recovery capacity is a little bit different than it was. Okay. So, right. So it's not that you can't do it, it's that you probably shouldn't. It's and these are the ones coming in with more hormonal adaptation and things like that that they were they like the distance, they like to run distance, they like to do cycling, they like to do like a lot of really high volume work, right? It can be anything. They exercised
Yeah.
every single day for a million years, for 30 years. It's like, yes, that sounds great on paper to someone that doesn't know any better, but that's a cumulative stress over time when all the life stuff starts adding up. So sometimes getting people, and this is with the younger population too, is that when we have to back off, but the difference between a younger population and an older one is we can kind of like back off and fix them and then go back to probably doing a pretty good amount later, whereas the older population just kind of needs to back off and stay there. you
Yeah.
know so
Yeah.
I try to
Yeah.
think, so the way I try to think of it too is I always try to look at their schedule too. So are they retired? Okay, I'm like, okay, if they're retired and they have a lot of time, then maybe I'm going to take their program and kind of split it up into where they're doing something every day or 5 or 6 days a week, but lesser amounts, right? Are they working? Okay, if they're working and they're busy, especially like your people in their 40s and probably early 50s, and now no hardly anyone retires anymore. So, you know, so
Right.
you know, yeah,
Well, you can't. Look how much eggs
that's
cost.
true.
You can't retire.
So in that case, then I'm going to kind of treat that like anyone else, and we're just going to work around their schedule. But understanding that the days of the days of training, 6 days a week to failure, with 15 exercises, 15 sets, like it's not happening anymore. you know?
And that's really hard. That's really hard for people because um, they feel
Right.
like they're a failure, right? They feel like I'm not doing as much as I should be doing, right? And that's really hard for people to, like I said, it's just different. I did I did marathons and half marathons all through my 30s, my entire decade of my 30s. That's all it was. I have pictures. I had no muscle tone, none. And then in my 40s, I was doing CrossFit 6 days a week, 6 days a week. Hello, thyroid. That stopped working very well. I mean, it just and I had to come to that place where it has to look different. It's not better or worse, right? Like when I work with my clients, we always talk about that. Is it good or bad? No, it's just different. We just have to think differently because we can't recover like that. And then what do we do though? We don't focus on the big goal, whatever that is. We focus on the little targets that get us there. So we're going to focus more on those recovery aspects. Let's talk about sleep. Let's talk about making sure you're eating enough food. Let's talk about, what are you doing to keep your stress levels low? And when stress levels are high, you talked about people who are still working, right? Maybe they're in a job that isn't so great, or maybe they have certain times of the year where their job is more stressful. Well, let's talk about that. Maybe we back off the training, maybe we back off the volume when other things are more stressful because we just don't have the
Yeah.
ability to recover like
Yeah.
that.
And there's, so that, especially that, like I said, that's especially hard for the people that have been exercising and training for a long time because they have this perception of what they've done in the past. And then if you flip that, the other side of that is that if you take someone that's newer, we talked about they still have a lot of room for potential, but a lot of times their build up in terms of how quickly we can ramp things up is a lot different than someone that's 20. Someone that's 20, listen, if you give me basically any halfway decently healthy 20-year-old, they're going to get so strong so fast. and they're going to make their body is going to change just by like pulling into the gym parking lot. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
just be
Just
like
by close
being
to the
there,
building.
right? And it's going to happen quick, and it's going to happen a lot. A lot of it is going to, in a short period of time. So we still get some of those kind of like that newbie progress in an older person, but it's going to be way less dramatic probably. So, that's another thing is understanding that they can't, just like younger people, they should not be comparing to others. They should not be, it's very difficult if you're 50 and you're just starting to get serious about your health and you're comparing yourself to your friend's husband who's been working out for 30 years and he's like in great shape. Yeah. Not the same person, on a lot of angles. Right. But you still can go ahead.
When I have a post-it note sitting right in front of me on my desk that says, who are you comparing yourself to? Right? Are you comparing yourself to the person you were before? And that's, I think, part of that when we talk about being a good coach, that's what we do as good coaches is we go, hey, last week, this is what happened. Let's compare you to last week.
Yeah, and when you're older, you have a lot of things to compare to. You can compare to other people your age that have been working out, other people that aren't your age that are working out. God forbid you compare yourself to like some 25-year-old that's on social media. Trust me, it sounds crazy, but I get people that do it. I'm like, Judy, you're fucking 52 and you've had 4 kids and you've been through the freaking ringer. I said, this girl doesn't know her ass from a hole in the ground, and she's in college and she has an OnlyFans and like all this shit. I'm like, you're not the same. Like, this isn't the same.
Right.
I said, but the thing is, and it's unfortunate because a lot of the time, and I mean, God, I know this better than anyone, a lot of those people that they compare to, and this goes for younger people comparing as well, is the people that they're comparing to aren't doing things right. They are not healthy. They're ticking time bombs that are going to crash and burn at any moment, right? So that's even worse if you're older comparing to somebody younger. It's like you can't do that. So it is very, and I'm not experienced it. I'm sure that there's a point where when things start to change, you reflect and you're kind of like introspective about some things, and you're like, I've even noticed it from like 20 to 30 and et cetera. And I'm like, okay, well, this is different. I'm not sure that I feel bad about it, but it's different, and I think that as you tick up in those decades, I mean, there's a lot more things you can possibly start picking at and reflecting on.
Yeah,
it's just more life. You just have more time, more memories. Yeah.
And and that's something, I always say, had I known when I was in my 20s, 30s, like had I started lifting correctly, doing the things right, like getting really serious about it, I would be in such a different space right now. But I think more than the physical part about it is that mental piece where, like you're talking about, you actually were aware enough when you hit 30 that like, oh, this is different. Let's think about this. Let's connect with ourselves and be aware. For someone who's hitting 40 and 50 or 40, you start to go in 5-year increments, just so you know, as you get older, 40, 45, 50, right? If you're not doing that, it gets frightening. It can get really scary. It becomes this obsessive, you start to Botox and filler and like do all those crazy things because you haven't connected with who you are.
And, hey, if you're comparing to the wrong people or anyone for that matter, then you're probably going to fall into that trap more,
Yeah. I have to come clean though. Super transparency this morning. I train, I go to the local high school in the mornings and I program and train for a group of kids. There's like 6 or 8 of them. Just volunteer, just go in, and they love it. And we've been working together for about a year. And one of the teachers came in this morning and was doing dumbbell bench, and he's early 30s, right? And one of them goes, "Hey, Coach Laura." I go, "Yeah." She goes, "You bench more than he does." I'm like, "Shh, shh, we don't compare." Like, yes,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah. But I mean,
You do it natural, right?
yeah. And
It's
I even
natural to do it.
I even run into that some where I'll meet somebody new, or friend of a friend or anyone, and they start asking me about weightlifting and this and that, and they're like asking me like what I do, as if that's relevant to them at all, you know. And I get why they're asking it, because they people want to emulate, right? They want to basically reproduce what someone else is doing. But I'm like, hey, listen, what I'm doing, what I do in the gym, and what I eat, and I think that has no bearing on what you should be doing, you know. And then if I do tell them,
Yeah.
and then I tell them, hey, but do you want to know what you should do? Like, and then what I tell them is so simple and so easy. They're like, "Are you shortchanging me here?
Yeah.
Like, what secrets are you holding out on?" I'm like, the
Right.
secret I'm holding out on the fact
that,
that I have, 15 years of basically hardcore bodybuilding under my belt. That's what.
yeah, you have a little mentally and
Right.
physically, like your body knows it better.
Yeah. So
But
there's,
yeah,
I always find that funny, and I think that's all the more reason that as you do get older, I think that there's probably even more and more value in seeking the help. This is a shameless plug for coaching. I think it's a great to have somebody that knows how to work with those populations and understands how to meet you in the middle and understands your needs, because it is going to change. If you're 20 and you've never worked out,
yeah,
chances are, unless you're seeking like optimal results, you can still get pretty good, okay results by going on the internet and pulling some shit off of a website and plugging into some like macro tracker. You're probably still going to get something. But if you're 50,
mm-hmm.
that equation might be a little different, you know?
Yeah. Well, and you're saying that it might be different.
It's going
It's
to be
totally
different.
because you can't just do macros at this stage of the game. You got to get labs done. You have to look at all the factors involved in what's going on. I mean, I had to come to Jesus with my coach at one point, and that's why I stopped doing CrossFit and I stopped the birth control and and I changed everything because it had to be about health. And when I focused on my health and I did those things and I drank the water and I ate the food and I got the sleep and I did things for self-care and I did the appropriate movement, I got so much healthier. I feel so good. I was on my way to like napping every day, and I could not have done that with a macro calculator. Couldn't have done it. It's just too complex. It's complex for everyone at every age. It's just that when you get to a certain age, it's
right.
Things have accumulated.
Yeah. Hey, and there's nothing there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's a lot of and there's a way to work around anything. Like I'm telling you, my lady with every freaking joint in her body that's been replaced, guess what? She's still in way better shape than she was 20, 30 years ago. And she's probably in better shape than she was in her 30s based on what I know about her. You know what I mean? I wasn't alive then.
Yeah.
But there's always a way. They're like, oh, it's, my knee or my back. I'm like, okay. There's a million and one ways that I can help you train your quad. You don't. And the funny thing is, it'll be, and we can kind of close it on this too. It's like, the funny thing is, it'll be well, I can't squat anymore. Why do you need to squat? I'm like, you haven't done anything in 30 years. Squatting with a barbell is like not even on the list. Hey, how about let's learn how to get up and down out of a chair and without like bending over and using your
Without,
hands. Or maybe we can use a leg
yes.
extension machine or train your glutes or something. I mean,
Yeah.
who cares if you can't squat? Who cares if you can't bench press? That doesn't matter. Like that has no relevancy anymore.
No, it doesn't. Not at all. It's about being healthy and having a good quality of
Yeah, I
life,
mean,
like we
hell,
talked about.
I could name probably 10 exercises that I did when I was 20 that I don't even do anymore because they don't benefit me. They don't feel the way that they should. They hurt. I get hurt, you know. I just don't do them.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it's so interesting that you say that too, is as we get older, it's really about, like you said, can you get up out of a chair? Because falling is the biggest reason that people end up in nursing homes. And most of y'all probably aren't thinking about a nursing home, but I tell you what, I want to live life and I don't want to have to rely on other people to make me move around, right? And I want to be 120 years old and still walking around on the planet instead of laying in. I don't want to lay in a bed doing nothing. And how do? You adjust, like you said, you're not doing certain work or certain movements because they just hurt you. That's great. We can find different ways around
Absolutely.
that. So,
Cool.
and you,
Awesome. So
yeah.
if anyone wants to reach out about services and you have podcasts too. So where can they find all of your information?
All of the information, Instagram at Coach Laura L. I have a website, www.lauralcoaching.com. And the podcast is actually on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And it's the Parallel Physiques Podcast.
Cool.
So,
I will reshare this. So anyone that maybe came in late, if you want to go back and watch the beginning, I'll reshare this so you can see it. I'll tag you in that as well. And I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank
you. I'm going to be talking
too.
to you guys again soon, right? But that's a couple weeks from now. Is it next week?
Everybody.
Oh, it's
the Parallel
Monday.
Podcast. Yes,
yeah.
Next week.
It is. I can't remember if it was next. I have it written down, by the way. If it was next Monday or following, but yeah, I'll be on. Sweet.
Yeah.
Cool.
Love
you
it.
too.
Have a great week.
Take it easy.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.